Now to help us focus on the fundamentals behind the technicals, I've got just the person, Jerry Parker, CEO of Chesapeake Capital, with us. Jerry, good Thursday morning. Happy to have you here. Let's talk about these new all-time highs in the ES. Earlier, we were breaking down the results from NVIDIA, some of the other stocks behind the historic move up. Another feather in the cap for the bulls.
Oh, very impressive. Let's hope it keeps going. It seems like it's off the back of one stock, but an important stock. And like you said earlier, especially as we hit these maybe higher interest rates, maybe higher than we've seen. As I was on the show last time, I mentioned we could see a U-turn and see these rates go higher again, even though there was so much hope and market movement at the end of last year, signaling lower rates. But I think the market has something else in mind now.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And as I've been kind of categorizing or describing it as, with rates at these levels, investors have really been, again, kind of focused on the positive, discounting the negative. But talk to me about how you hope it keeps going, right? If you're positioned with it, if you're positioned with the trend, that's really all you can do. I mean, find a place to find an opportunistic place to try and get on board, right? And kind of grab a hold of both hands, hope it continues, know where to get out if it doesn't, right? Because you need to be able to identify if you're wrong. But along those lines, Jerry, I'd imagine the bulls want to see the NASDAQ, the Dow. The Russell's been a laggard for a while here, but those other two majors participate to the upside because the ES can't do it alone.
No, it seems like it doesn't have to. It's all about the 7 or the 5 stocks. So all news probably for a while is going to be positive, and the market's going to enjoy that. I just hope it continues. And it's rare that the trend followers are long the stocks and short the bonds. So, but this is a great market, and it's a great opportunity to realize that you should pay attention to the trend over historical things that have happened in history, where it seems that lower rates are great for stocks. We could see a great stock market with some higher rates if it doesn't get too out of control.
I like that. Focus on the trend, not so much get too dialed into history, as you mentioned, or the fundamentals. In some ways, one could argue, right? Because sometimes we do see that counterintuitive type price activity relative to what investors would expect to see based on the headlines. But you've talked to us before about how sometimes that sets up for the best trades.
Oh, yeah, it's always great to have a trade where the fundamentals are agnostic or kind of against you, and everyone is discounting this latest breakout to the upside or downside. So I've never been a fan of wanting the technicals and the fundamentals to agree. It's usually better that most people are sort of surprised to see some sort of new price action.
Jerry, a couple weeks ago, or last week, I guess it was, CPI, PPI sent the market into a bit of a tailspin. Concerns associated with and expectations for rate cuts being pushed back a bit here. But again, kind of focusing on the positive, we bounced back quite rapidly, I guess, kind of in a strong bull trend as we just looked at, identified my chart of the day, again, the ES. I think that sort of feeds into what we're talking about, right? How dips are short-lived. There's a reason why they say positioning with the trend, right? The reason they say that it's your friend, because I feel like the market doesn't spend a lot of time against you. And rather than like if you're trading on a short term, a 5-minute candle chart, or trying to take some of these advantages, some of these intraday opportunities where you really have to do the work yourself, if you're participating in that longer term trend, you kind of sit back, you manage your trade, but you let the market do the work for you.
That's right. These markets can go a long ways. We've seen some amazing trends in the stocks and in some of the commodities recently. And I think your goal as a trader is don't screw it up. Let the market do what it's going to do.
Get out of your own way.
And get out of the way.
Yeah.
You're not that smart. You're not smarter than everyone else. You're not smarter than the market. And no one else is smarter than the market either.
Yeah.
So have that in your back pocket as your big edge, that you're going to be a slave to the price trends and a slave to the philosophy of we can't really predict where these markets are going.
I like that. I was told many, many years ago, and I've applied this for a long time, and it works, right? Again, kind of along those lines, get out of your own way, right? Just stand there. Don't just do something kind of thing. And ultimately, I think it does kind of feed into the mindset that trends can continue a lot longer than we as traders think they're possible, right? Or think that they're likely to. So again, let the price and let the trend develop in its own way. Don't necessarily try and overanalyze it. Let's talk a little bit about how it's not just here in the U.S., right? You got the Nikkei, you mentioned, new all-time highs, right? Taking out those 1989 levels. For that matter, again, another well-defined trend that we're seeing to the upside. And also, as you look at that, you've got the yen on the counter side of that, which has been a well-defined trend lower.
Right. Well, it took a while, since 1989, I guess. I think in America, we would have been quite disappointed if we hadn't seen new highs since that long ago. But better late than never. And yeah, it's another surprise probably to the upside, another trade that the trend followers can get and hang on to that maybe surprised the trend followers as well, who don't really pay attention to anything and don't really get caught with being surprised because they're always going with the trend. So yeah, that Nikkei is a great move. Hopefully it keeps going. And of course, Japan is the lowest rates in the world, so maybe that's the key.
Jerry, as we look at that, well, a reflection of that in terms of their foreign currency, in terms of their currency, right? The Japanese yen, foreign currency reflection of that low rate environment that we're seeing. But then I wanted to get back to, again, you mentioned it's unusual to see trend followers long stocks and short treasuries. Taking a look here, can we get into this chart again real quick? The US dollar, because it's been kind of stuck in the middle, right? For a trend follower, in some ways, this has been a bit of a nightmare.
Yeah, right. I looked at the dollar just a minute ago, and it was pretty much where it is about a year ago. So it hasn't really moved very much. Everybody was calling for a lower dollar recently, but once again, I thought, yeah, we could see a U-turn in this too. So the dollar is fine. It's hanging out there. My guess is it'll probably surprise us. And where's the biggest surprise going to come from? Probably a strong dollar. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that happen.
Jerry, with all the focus on the indices here, a last question for you, and we'll let you get on with your busy day. Some of the other products that you watch that we kind of push to the back burner, can you talk to us about, for example, we've got some grains which have been trending lower pretty consistently, corn and beans. Talk to us about natural gas, right? We're going to look at that a little bit later on in the show. The chart master is going to break it down. We've seen it bounce recently, but pretty well-defined trend lower there that had been playing out as well.
Long-term trend of the natural gas lower. The commodities, I think, in general, are pretty dead, except for one. It's the one that made the news, the cocoa. Cocoa is crazy. It is the typical trend that scares you to death to hang on to it and to be a trend follower. But the profits in that have been quite outstanding. It could almost pass for another NVIDIA if you weren't looking at the name on the chart. But yeah, cocoa is the star of all the commodities, but everything else looks pretty quiet.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at copper, just above the 50-day moving average, but for the most part sideways, one could argue in a similar pattern as you just pointed to as far as the US dollar, which is in the middle of the range that we've been in over the last year and basically right where we were just about a year ago. Hey, Jerry, always appreciate you joining us here. I love talking trend, and your expertise is highly valued, so it's a pleasure to have you on the show here. Jerry Parker, CEO of Chesapeake Capital, joining us here, and again, breaking down some of the existing trends that you should be watching as a trader and following as a student of price ultimately, even if you're not trading them.